I'm Vanessa Joy, and I'm going to show you how I photograph wedding details, including that macro ring shot. So we're going to start off with the macro shot because I already have that set up, and then I want to show you how I actually build the whole invitation and everything. All of this is a mess. That's not what we're photographing. We're actually photographing right in front, and I'm photographing on my cell phone. It's a great way to have a nice reflective surface, just make your shot a little bit more interesting. I'm shooting with the Canon 100mm macro. It's a 2.8 lens. Now when you're shooting macro, you actually want to go higher than 7.1 if you can. It's kind of dark in here, and I am shooting this with natural light, so that means I'm gonna have to go a little bit higher on my ISO. Luckily, I've got the 1DX Mark III here, so I have no problem going higher on my ISO. And right now you can see my settings are at 8000 ISO, 5.6, which is really not enough, honestly, for macro, but let's just start there and see what we get. Before we jump into this, make sure that you download my free posing inspiration guide. We could all use some inspiration. Get that in the link below with lots of ideas on how to pose groups and individuals. So in addition to having my phone as the base for a little bit of a reflection, I want to have a background as well that just adds a little bit of color, a little bit of something going on in the back. So I typically use the bride's shoes for this. I have the shoes in back, and I don't want to go lower than 160th on my shutter, and typically I'm shooting these on the floor. I don't know why, bad habit or something, but it is kind of nice actually to be able to take off my camera, put it down, and focus from here. I do use manual focus when I'm doing ring shots, and I like having a little bit more control. It's okay, it's not great, and the whole thing's a little bit dark, so I'm actually gonna go up to gasp 10,000 on my ISO, down to 100 so I can get to 7.1 on my aperture. Yes, so much better. I've got all of the prongs in focus, and I can discern a little bit more about what's happening in the back. And then of course, you can lay this ring on its side. Another thing that I typically like to have is a small reflector. I actually have a 4-inch reflector I'm usually gonna place back here to throw on light. I just happen to not have that with me right now. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my 50mm lens, which is pretty much how I shoot all the rest of my details, and let's get everything in place. There is a way I like to put everything in place. I tend to start off, I just have a piece of paper here. This isn't even a lay flat underneath. This is just a piece of paper I picked up at a stationery shop right on the same street as Adorama. It's actually a pretty great little place to find cheap lay flats. Of course, these that are holding it down, this is from Kiss albums, and they make lay flats, and this goes to their linen lay flats that I have. So I'm just using that to keep that in place. All right, so I have some things to play with. Not that. Let me just take everything off. I usually like starting off just with the center of it being the main invitation. So we've got the center of the group shot, as I call it, putting this here. We've just got some nice ribbons all scattered about. And then I just kind of start putting things down as they fit nicely. Now, one thing I do like to have is kind of symmetry here. So I've got silver on the top up here. I'm gonna put the other silver jewelry down here. So I've also specifically laid out the veil here so that I see the details of the scalloping. That's, you know, usually what they paid for, what they really liked about the veil. So I want to be able to show that off. All right, and then adding the shoes in here. A little something like that. Let's get this out of there. Now, one thing I learned from my friend Jana Williams is that when you are doing shots like this, you want to kind of point everything, so like the shoes, towards the main part or the most expensive part of the picture to kind of make it look a little bit more high end. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm kind of pointing this down towards it, or even having things coming out of it just to draw attention to where the main part of the photograph is. And then you want to make sure all of your little lines are nice and straight. And then the last thing you might want to consider, or you could have done this before, is somehow raise, so you've got like different levels happening. You could just stick your cell phone underneath, put that on the top, and now you've got kind of different levels happening here. This may all seem very silly to spend so much time on, but these are the kinds of things that, you know, the couple took a lot of time deciding on, or, you know, show a lot about their personality. So, you know what, photograph them and they go really nicely in an album. Now, of course, as I was setting this up, a little sun streak came in, so I'm just gonna probably have to stand here because that's not gonna bode very well in the photo, having an overexposed spot. I do also like to use a white reflector if I can, just to fill in a little bit more of the shadows. It's really dark in here, so I think I'm gonna use the silver, which is gonna produce a little bit more light. It is gonna produce some specular highlights you'll notice on the shoes, but I think I need more. I'm gonna go ahead into my live view just to get my basic exposure, which thank God I can go down quite a bit more from the ring shot because this is the 50mm 1.2, and I'm gonna go all the way down, probably at a 2.2 to start. Let's see where we end up after that. Yeah, I think around 2.2 is gonna look good. Let's give myself some breathing room. We'll go to, let's just say, let's live dangerously at 2.2. All right, so as I go through, the nice part is I can just tap on what I want the camera to focus on with this deep learning technology, and even as I move, it's gonna keep focusing exactly where I tapped it. So let's go ahead and tap that. Oops. And then I'm using my neck strap as extra stability here because I'm only at 160th of a second. I like to get one as wide as I can possibly go to get everything in there. And then we just kind of go in and get a bunch of little vignettes. Now I know all of you are freaking out, like, why are you hand holding this? Well, I usually have an assistant and I have to hold my own reflector right now, so that's all right. And then feel free to change your angle too. You don't have to do everything from above. Come on down and get some different shots this way too. Now again, I'm choosing to use this with live view, and it's kind of helpful if we want to get lower too, so I'm not crawling on the ground in a dress, as fun as that sounds. The last thing I want to mention is don't be afraid to use a little foreground. So we're going to take the veil and play with that. All the fluff out of here and just photograph the shoes. I know I said last thing before, but I almost forgot the shoes, which is sad because they're my favorite. That's how I photograph all the wedding details. Here we go. And hope you got something out of it. Happy wedding.